Welcome to the Solid Signal Podcast for the week of May 6, 2019. That's right. It's finally getting almost close to summer. Memorial Day is right around the corner, and we're looking forward to that, of course. But for now, let's talk about one of everybody's favorite spring projects, which is putting up an over-the-air TV antenna. I know maybe that isn't everybody's favorite spring project, but I have a feeling for our Solid Signal faithful, it ranks pretty high. So, thinking about antennas, the real question is, what is the perfect antenna for you? If you're doing the research yourself, it's a little harder. If you are just going to do a free antenna request at solidsignal.com, it's super easy. Go to solidsignal.com and click the link at the very top center where it says Need Antenna Help. It's super easy, and it takes usually about a day and a half before you get a recommendation that is just perfect for your area. So what goes into the perfect antenna recommendation? First of all, the biggest thing, most important thing is it going to receive the channels that you want to receive? And that can be trickier than you think, because it's not just, is it VHF or UHF? There's a lot more to it, in fact. Different antennas are better at different frequency ranges, and different antennas work better at different distances. So a lot of times you'll find that an antenna choice is an extremely personal thing. There could be 2 or 3 different antennas that are fairly comparable for your area, but more often than not, there's going to be a single antenna that works really, really better than the other antennas in your area, depending on what you need, what channels you need to see, and how far you are away, and whether there are things like trees or hills, mountains in the way of the signal, which tends to create the need for a larger antenna or an amplified antenna. Another thing that goes into a perfect antenna recommendation is knowing whether or not you can put something outside. Not everybody is lucky enough to be able to use an indoor antenna as much as we would all love to be able to use an antenna about the size of a soda can just sitting on top of the TV. Well, unfortunately, if you're more than about 15 miles away from the city center, sometimes less, you'll need a bigger antenna than that. And a lot of folks are out in the suburbs or rural areas, and they're going to need bigger antennas. So that's where the conflict gets set up. Of course, you want the biggest antenna possible because it's going to pick up the most signals in general. However, most homeowners associations have rules as far as where you can put your antenna and what you can do there. And so you might need an antenna that complies with those rules. The rules have to be pretty common sense. I mean, you can't have an antenna bigger than 39 inches in most cases, because that's the federal guideline. And usually the homeowners association or the condo board or even the landlord has the right to ask you to put it in a private space, which could include your roof, could include a back patio, could include that sort of thing, so that it isn't necessarily in plain sight. That's something else that needs to be considered when we look at which antenna is best for you. Another antenna idea that we need to consider is, do you have signals coming from a lot of different directions? And if so, you'll need an omnidirectional antenna, which is a completely different kind of beast and has its own limitations to it. But we tend to recommend directional antennas whenever possible. They tend to be better at picking up signals that are all coming from the same direction, and we recommend an omni kind of only when it's necessary. But when it is, it's going to be a perfect solution for you. So there's directionality, there's signal strength, there's what your homeowners association is going to let you do, and I guess there's also the aesthetics of it. We always try to give you an antenna that is going to be relatively decent looking. A lot of people find those old Yagi style antennas to be unsightly, and sometimes you can't avoid having one because it's just the area that you're in and the kind of signals that you need to pick up. However, if you can avoid it, we often recommend a smaller antenna, sometimes clad in plastic, to try to give you a more modern look that fits in a little bit more with the way that your home looks on the outside and looks a little bit more modern. It really is a lot more of an art than a science. To be honest with you, I was surprised about that when I first started getting into this. I thought there would be a simple formula, and a lot of those apps that you get will follow a very simple formula. But there's a lot more to it than that, which is why each one of our antenna recommendations is done by a professional, a real human being who's looking at your particular situation and recommending the antenna that's best for you. that's about it for this Solid Signal podcast. It's true that sometimes I tend to go a little bit longer, but this is coming in just over 5 minutes, which is what I like to do actually for a typical size podcast. I try not to waste a lot of time. Join us again next week for another Solid Signal podcast. In the meantime, shop solidsignal.com and visit blog.solidsignal.com.